In today's video, we will be covering the testimonies of Sheriff Edward Callahan and Judge James Hargis. Will the testimony of both of these men refute the testimonies that were given by the plaintiff's side of the case? Or will they simply confirm them? One will testify as a hostile witness for the side of the plaintiff, while the other will testify on his own behalf for the defense. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine, but it convinces YouTube that we need a bigger time machine to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. Ed Callahan called to the stand. Sheriff Ed Callahan was called to the stand as a hostile witness for the plaintiff. What would he say that would either confirm or deny the charges leveled at him by Mrs. Rebecca Bailey and W.P. Hampton? Would he refute anything about what Alex Hargis said? According to the Evening Bulletin, quote, for the defense, Judge Hargis and Sheriff Callahan were on the stand Friday. Winchester, Kentucky, December 24th. Judge James Hargis and Sheriff Ed Callahan were on the stand Friday for the defense, and all the defendants have now told their story to the jury. Judge Hargis was on the stand most of the day, unquote. While Ed Callahan's testimony in the plaintiff's case would be very brief, it is questionable whether this really helped his case with the court. According to the newspaper report, Callahan did testify for the defense as well, but we could not find what he said or testified to on the stand. We can only surmise that he spoke of the same things as Judge James Hargis said later in this video. Testimony to refute Mrs. Rebecca Bailey. When Mrs. Rebecca Bailey gave her testimony, she recalled a visit from French and Callahan to her two sons, Mose and Felix Feltner. She stated that the men in question wanted her sons to testify against the plaintiff. For this action, the two men would help Mose out of trouble for killing Jesse Fields. The plaintiff then called Sheriff Ed Callahan to the stand as a hostile witness to testify to these events, according to the December 20th edition of the Evening Bulletin. Quote, Sheriff Callahan, another defendant, was also placed on the stand by the plaintiffs. He testified that he visited Felix Feltner at the latter's home in Leslie County in company with Jason Hargis and B.F. French, and they talked with Mose and Felix Feltner, and that the former denied that he intended to testify in behalf of the Marcums, as the defendants had heard. He was not cross-examined by the defendants, unquote. So, why was he not cross-examined? Was it because he was going to be recalled to the stand to make a case for the defense? Why did the reporters of the time not record what he said on the stand? Could it be that it was a repeat of what was stated later on by Judge Hargis? Testimony to refute W.P. Hampton. One of the more interesting testimonies to come from the plaintiff's case was the banker's testimony about the movement of money. We learned by the testimony of W.P. Hampton that Callahan moved money from his accounts into Judge James Hargis' accounts. But what Callahan says here is interesting. Somehow the amount of money exchanged between Judge Hargis and Mose Feltner jumped by $500. Why? We get more of this testimony in the semi-weekly Interior Journal. Quote, Sheriff Ed Callahan and Judge James Hargis, defendants in the damage suit of Mrs. Marcum for $100,000, were placed on the stand by the plaintiffs Monday. Callahan said he knew nothing of any $1,500 paid to Felix Feltner by Hargis. Judge Hargis stated that he loaned Feltner $1,500 and took his due bill, unquote. So, was it a loan or a payoff? If it was a loan, was the due bill given to the court as evidence? Did this money come from Callahan's account that he gave to Hargis in the statements given by the plaintiff's witness, W.P. Hampton? If Hargis loaned $1,500 to Feltner, was Feltner then the actual person who paid for the killing of Marcum under the direction of Judge Hargis? These are just some of the questions that we have concerning this testimony given by Callahan that were not answered by this testimony as it was reported. The testimony of Judge James Hargis for the plaintiff. Like Callahan, Judge Hargis would also testify to the events surrounding the testimony given by Mrs. Rebecca Bailey concerning her sons, Mose and Felix Feltner. We found this testimony in the Paducah Sun. Quote, James Hargis, one of the defendants, was called to the stand by the plaintiff's attorney. He said that he heard Mose Feltner would testify to certain things for the plaintiffs in this trial, and went to the home of Felix Feltner in Leslie County to see about it. B.F. French and Edward Callahan also went with him. He talked with Feltner, and the latter denied that he would testify as the witness had heard. Unquote. So what was really going on here? Was this a payoff, intimidation of a witness, or was it simply men curious to see what Feltner was going to reveal on the stand? Either way, Judge Hargis knew better than to go to Feltner and speak to him about his testimony. Being a judge, he knew that if this was to come out in any way, that it could lead to not only sanctions, but to disbarment and removal from the bench at the very least. The testimony of Judge James Hargis for the defense. The next on the stand after Callahan came Judge James Hargis. His testimony would last throughout the rest of the day. We do have a glimpse of what he said on the stand. According to the Evening Bulletin, quote, he testified as to the killing of Marcum and the events immediately before and after that event. He heard shots and saw Marcum fall, but he could not see far enough into the corridor of the courthouse to see who did the shooting. The shots came from Marcum's rear and from the interior of the courthouse. Shortly after the killing, Captain B.J. Ewan was sent for and asked to tell if he knew who did the killing so that a warrant for his arrest might be issued. Witness also sent word to D.D. Hurst, the father-in-law of Marcum, that if he wanted a warrant for anyone, witness would gladly issue it. Unquote. So, Hargis claimed that he was not present when Marcum was shot and killed, so he did not know who did the crime. He would also state in his testimony that he sent for Captain B.J. Ewan so that they would know who to arrest, because since Ewan was standing right there, he would be the one who knew who shot Marcum. Hargis would also state that he sent word to Marcum's father-in-law, D.D. Hurst, that if he wanted an arrest, then Hargis would write out the necessary warrants. This all made Hargis sound innocent of the crime. But was he really? Hargis would go on to testify in the same article. Quote, the witness did not indicate to Captain Ewan that the latter did not look back when Marcum was killed, nor tell him he was the smartest man in the world for so doing. Great excitement prevailed at the time of the killing, and the witness did all he could to discover the murderer. Unquote. So, let's take a moment here. You had people walking and running away from the courthouse, or better yet, hiding from any potential bullets. All the while, several witnesses state that a man came out of the courthouse in a calm manner and mingled with the crowd immediately after the shooting. Any chance of finding the shooter still within the courthouse has now gone. So, why search the courthouse, other than to clear those that were already gone? In his final testimony given in the same article, Hargis would go on to explain why he paid for the defense of Jet and Britton. He would also give testimony as to the reason why he was so angry with Marcum about the statements he had made, but he would still claim that he didn't think about it at the time that Marcum was killed. Quote, witness had no conversation with Tom White the day of the killing and did not see him again until he was in custody. Witness employed counsel to defend Jet because the latter was his sister's son. Also employed counsel to defend Will Britton, now in jail at Lexington for the murder of Jim Cockrell, because the latter is a distant kinsman, and witness believed Britton was being imposed upon. Witness was angry when the statements of Marcum were published and never spoke to him afterwards, but did not think of this just when he saw Marcum killed. Unquote. There had to be more reasons why he paid for the defense of Jet and Britton, because they were kin. Could it really be that Judge Hargis really had Marcum killed? that they had been enemies since the questionable election, and tensions between the two sides had been building. It would not be unreasonable to think that Marcum took one step too far against the Hargis clan, and now he met the price for that step. From what we can piece together about the trial, after the testimony of Judge James Hargis, the trial was once again called into recess for a couple of days for the weekend and would have continued on the following Tuesday morning. This may have been for the Christmas holiday, as the trial was taking place during that time. In the next video, we will be covering the last of the witness statements. However, this case will not be over yet, as there are many more trials to come, and more testimonies in those trials from other people. Please keep in mind that all testimonies are repeated in each of these cases. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Appalachian feuds. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.